You guys also pulled off some of the greatest fundraising runs in all startups that ever existed. It was kind of wild, I think. It's like, how do you feel? What advice would you give somebody who was raising? And what was something you learned from being a part of this crazy adventure about raising people?
Yeah, I think
Anything you now have that maybe priorly you didn't have before you raised?
fundraising is, first of all, it's definitely a lot on how much are you capitalizing on a current trend where all of the capital is interested in. Like for example, right when COVID happened, delivery was the number one idea. It was either grocery delivery or any sort of delivery or virtual conferences or online dating. These three were, or of course, masks or medicine or any within that space. These four were industries where you, as long as you had an idea that made a bit of sense, you had a lot of capital available because people really understood that they could make a very quick return on their capital. When COVID finished, you had a very sharp decline on these last mile logistic companies, online video conferencing companies. Things example also from these, what was that company's name where you come log in and have virtual conversations?
The company's name for Zoom or?
No, Zoom, but there's like another one where you could have online chats and so on. It went up and now it's gone down completely as well.
Okay, I can only think of Zoom or something. I just know. Yeah. Okay. So there was like a connection between the world was in an abnormal state and people capitalized on it. And so it's like when investors saw that there was an immediate opportunity for them, they capitalized on it. So we had in alignment with the zeitgeist of the generations of the same.
Exactly, because if you make it easy to ride the wave of capital is always there. It just depends on what industry you're at the moment. And then, of course, there's a lot of different questions about defensibility, having a really strong team, being able to show results fast and so on. But I think before that, choosing which industry you're at a certain time is one of the biggest determining factor of how easy it's going to be for you to raise capital.
I'm very interested also in the idea of iceberg psychology, where it's like you see the outcomes of people, but you don't see the stuff that they did in the dark that develop a kind of character that justified that they could endure being on the mountaintop. What was something that you did during this stage at worst where nobody knew about it, but it was actually foundational to you, to the contribution of this, or to you being able to withstand this kind of pressure that came with?
I think founding businesses is all about doing stuff without expecting return, or better to put, doing work despite of getting no results. And I've done around more than 150 deliveries myself on a bike, trying out every sort of way of how to deliver with in the cold, in the snow. So I definitely understand how tough it is for the first job. And it's definitely, like you mentioned, of doing stuck in the dark that helps you understand what it's going to take for something to really work. And as a founder, you basically need to be doing all of the dirty work, because you will be doing endless amount of work which will not give you any monetary results in the start. And you have to be okay with that. If you come up with very high expectations that I need to do this and I need to see results very early monetarily, it's going to be very hard for you to succeed, because there will be a long time period where you don't see that. If you judge success from the lens of money, but if you judge success from the lens of learning, then it's very rewarding because every action that you take, if you properly reflect on it, you learned something out of it. So it was successful. Even if you failed in all of the dimensions of, you didn't get any customers, users acquisitions, money, etc., etc. So there's a lot of work that goes in the dark within that space. And I think usually you only get rewarded for your success when you've already succeeded since a long time, but external success comes much later, and you cannot be judging with that lens, the star.
Very interesting. I love that you are describing not only to what to do, but how to go through it. The ethos is like one of the beliefs that has served me well is leading my venture like I'm already dead, as where I don't need anything anymore from this, where the idea that this exists is rewarding themselves for me. I'm so inspired by people of the past who, I don't know, like some of the inventors of humanity they had is like 400 years later, like people started to use what they have come up with, and I always feel like if you only do for stuff that you get paid by tomorrow, it's a you're a child, you're not a leader to some degree. If you could put like a message on every coffee mug in the world of the founders who are in that first stage where they do the deliveries themselves, where they don't have a big office yet, they do in the podcast, like here, what was like something you would write to them as a mantra or something to look at it every day or something like that. Something to not lose track of me.
I think there's a lot of different mantras out there that speak to each different people differently, but I would say maybe the one that can help you sustain that initial hardship would really be to only think about, do you know more about how to make this successful, whatever venture you're doing, than yesterday? And that is the only thing that matters. Because in the grand scheme of things, if you definitely come up with, first have these inspiration or motivation that, I'm doing this because I want to be a millionaire, or I want to go ahead and change the lives of millions of people or so on, that task is so daunting that you will constantly feel that you are failing. Yeah. So if you reframe that and you'd only make it that, have you learned more about your venture than yesterday? And if that's yes, you're doing great. If no, what do you need to change? Still, you don't plateau.
I love this. It's like, how do you protect the myth that is governing you? Because I grew up as a basketball player, and basketball is also one of those things where the time between you starting to learn the craft and you getting paid for it is a decade in between. And I see many talented people lose love for the game because it was just too far away. But those who I saw succeed would be those who had played these internal incremental games with themselves on being a little bit better than they were yesterday. And they would even like track it down. And as long as it didn't fall out of love with the game, so to say. What was, you think, your biggest test of your leadership in regards to your entrepreneurial career?
I think for leadership, it's the two biggest values that I see are, how can you inspire people to work on something that is bigger than themselves? And that is extremely hard to do. Because if you want to convince someone to work on something which they need to put even before themselves, it needs to be a big vision. Yeah. It needs to be exciting enough that they say it's worth it. And we collectively are going to buy into this vision and make this even something before our, let's say, personal interest directly. But the interest of the vision will basically ultimately also be in the interest of ourselves, but in the long term.